A barista was an ex-student of mine who we did not get along. I thought, oh no, he's gonna like see me and like do something to my coffee or something.
Sounds like you might be pro AI.
Pro AI. I love that though. It's like become a pro or an anti.
When is the ask going to be too much?
I think the root of almost every problem in our country, you could draw a line right back to education. Early in my career, I mentioned politics one time and I lost like 30% of the class, 40% of the class.
All right, who's the cattiest department at the school?
The cattiest,
Yeah, the faculty member you would not want to sit next to.
I also see it as like the worst cheating I've ever seen in my career. Test scores, I don't want to brag about test scores, but they're very high.
Do it.
And I don't give homework.
What assignment do you hate grading?
I was in the hospital at UCLA for an entire week, and one of my ex-students showed up. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it right now, but
We actually asked your students, if you could ask Mr. Cuny anything, what would you ask him? If you could change whether or not you had cancer, but risk losing what you have now, do you make that trade?
one of the day in the life of a teacher, so. Oh.
Well, thank you so much for having lunch with me today. I mean, I know it's the end of the year. Therefore, I have some end of the year mystery sheet cake from the Teacher's Lounge. Do you know how there's always like sheet cake in the Teacher's Lounge? Is this a thing for you? Like always. I don't know where it comes from though. I also have some mystery meat, probably taken out of one of my students' lockers. Really excited. Crushed up Takis. Delicious. What do you have for lunch?
I brought some yogurt and then the more iconic apple, which I know is pretty cliche,
Did a
but
student bring that apple for you?
no.
Okay.
That has happened, but no, this is my own apple.
Have you gotten more or less thank you cards now that you're California Teacher of the Year?
Actually, I got less. Actually, now that I think about it, like, yeah, I didn't really get as many. No, I always get amazing thank you cards. I save all of them too, actually.
What's the most surprising one you've ever gotten?
Most surprising thank you card.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have it's kind of like a thank you card. I was at a Starbucks, and the barista was an ex-student of mine who we did not get along. In fact, he at one point hit me in the back of the head with Skittles while I was at the board writing, and I kept turning around going, and it was, by the way, this was like my second year of teaching, and so I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, well, who did that? You know, and everyone's laughing, and I'd turn around and he hit me again in the head with the Skittle. And I figured out who it was, and I kicked him out of the class, and we didn't really get along very well. And then I was at this Starbucks, and I saw him as the barista, and I thought, oh no, he's gonna like see me and like do something to my coffee or something. Well, anyway, when I went to go get my coffee, he had written Mr. Cuny on the coffee, and then he said, "You're my favorite teacher, and you were why I went to school every day." And I had no idea, you know, that I had an impact on him. So that was probably, in a way, a thank you card that was most surprising.
I love that. Okay, well, bon appetit. The deal is we're gonna, dig into our lunch. But if I ask a question that you don't want to answer, we're just gonna trade food. Okay, so you can choose. You can answer a question, or you can trade for my crushed up Takis and mystery meat.
Okay.
Sound good?
Deal.
All right. What got you into teaching?
Well, I actually got a business degree and came out here to Los Angeles with a job at one of the studios in marketing, and it, was I guess a great job. But I have a history. I'm a cancer survivor from when I was a teenager. Luckily survived a really harrowing experience in my life, obviously, and I think that has influenced so much of my life, but specifically that moment, because I was sitting in a cubicle and I remember just thinking, like, this cannot be why I got a second chance at life, is to sit here and try to convince people to see bad movies. Like, it can't be what it comes down to. And I just didn't feel fulfilled, and so I actually walked away from that job, and I was looking at medicine or teaching, and then I started subbing. And I started subbing at Van Nuys High down in Los Angeles. And I didn't necessarily love subbing, as we kind of talked about, but I started to see that I really wanted to do this. I wanted to be with these kids and help these kids and try to make a difference. And so that's why I really started teaching, and then fell in love with it and never looked back. And I want this to be a playground of learning. So I filled the classroom with my favorite music posters and movie posters, and just kind of humanize myself to the kids in a way to make this place feel casual and fun. I want it to feel casual. I want their affective filter, lowered. I want them ready to take risks, so that I can then, from their risks, interpret what I need to do next. Because I always say that the kids teach me what to teach next.
Playground of learning sounds awesome. It also sounds exhausting. Can you talk me through how you maintain a playground of learning for 23 years as a teacher?
I think I'll take the Takis. No, just joking. So, yeah, that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. But see, I don't know. I feel like there are the days, every teacher, no matter how I think hard you work and everything, there are the days where you need to get the kids working on something so you can like catch up on grading for a day. But I also find that those days when I go home, I feel kind of guilty. Like I feel like time was wasted, time was lost. The days that are exhausting, like where I run a Socratic seminar that leads into a writing activity where I'm zooming around the room the whole time, I go home tired, but I go home very happy. So I think, as a teacher, you have to balance it because you have to take care of yourself and you have to take care of your own well-being. And we work ourselves to the bone. So you have to find ways to take work off your plate. But having fun with the kids while learning is, while maybe exhausting, it's also the most fulfilling part. If that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. I might want part of your lunch. So I'm going to ask you, what assignment do you hate grading the most?
Well, I mean, I'm an English teacher. I hate grading essays. I mean,
they're the worst.
Exhausting.
The worst.
I mean, I have a little stack right now. It started with, if I start today, I only have to do 4 a day and now it's up to 10 a day because I haven't started because I keep looking at it's not even a stack anymore. It's all digital, which is almost worse because it's just
so
hidden
much worse
for me. In fact, I used AI for this. I created a debate prompt. It was like a 1.5-page long prompt that AI helped me make that basically would give the kids like 8 debate prompt phrases like restorative justice could not be used in modern society. And then they could pick one of these and they have to go pro or con, and then the AI would debate them. So I helped them. We did that to lead to their thesis development, and it was powerful.
So AI, sounds like you might be pro AI. Tell me about AI.
Pro AI. I love that though. It's like become a pro or an anti.
Yeah, talk to me about it.
When it's not even a belief system, right? It's like a piece
Isn't
of
it?
technology. I mean, I guess it could be at some point, but I'm using it all the time. I mean, I see it as a tool. I'm seeing the best writing I've seen in my entire career this year from this group. It has rapidly sped up the feedback cycle in which I can get them feedback. I'm also trying to teach them AI literacy at the same time. Again, I tell my students, and this is something I would have told my first year teacher too, is to tell your students explicitly that you care about them. Like we do, but we don't ever say it. And I think it's really important to say it. And I do now. I always the way I say it is I tell the students, hey, I don't know why or how you ended up in this room with me, but now we are connected. Like you will always have been my student and I will always have been your teacher. And so our lives are now connected. So because of that, I now care about you and I'm rooting for you and I'm going to champion you and I'm going to do everything I can to help you be more successful in life. And that's what I tell them on basically the first week. And they usually look at me, but it's interesting because I'll get looks of like, this guy's crazy. But I'll tell you what, every time I do that, I see tears in 1 or 2 kids' eyes. And it makes me always remember that they might have never heard that from an adult until that moment. And so it's so important for us to say this. And there's all sorts of research on this. There's the Wise Feedback Study by Yeager at UT Austin. It's just fascinating that we need to be explicit. So in that vein, I told the kids, you need to learn how to use this. AI literacy is not a misnomer. Like, as anybody who knows who's been really using it, you learn how to use it. Now, I also see it as like the worst cheating I've ever seen in my career. Yeah. So we do need guardrails. But one thing that does worries me is the head in the sand approach. I think is just leading to massive cheating that is being completely undetected. And that scares me actually a lot more than like getting kids on it. I think we're going to ignore this for now is a disaster. I asked my seniors of the day to raise their hand if they've used AI to cheat on an assignment, and it was 100%. So they're all using it. It's so readily available to them. And I know some people say, well, kids always have cheated. And it's like, yeah, well, those were kids that had an older sibling or were kind of edgier kids who were kind of looking at, but now everyone has the older sibling. The older sibling is named ChatGPT, and it can give them anything that you send home, which is interesting because I'm kind of talking along on this, but I think the 20-page homework packet was always a bad idea. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think this is any new news. But I hope that AI will actually work as a catalyst to get us as a practice away from that kind of stuff, because it never was good and it was always inequitable and you never knew who was really filling it out anyway. And now it being sent home, I think you have to 100% assume that AI is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the new easy button, right? Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
But to teach kids use it as a tool is groundbreaking. And then I was awesome. I have a friend who I'm teaching her daughter, and she just texted me the other day and said she just got 100% on the AP Chem test. She couldn't even believe it because I thought she was struggling. And then she said, well, I did what Mr. Cuny taught us, and I threw the study guide into ChatGPT, and I had it quiz me for about 2 hours, and I completely understand the material now.
That's fascinating.
You know, and we have all this evidence on retrieval practice as like the best way to learn and study in a lot of ways. And AI can become this like partner on the side. So I think, you know, I'm yet to meet a lot of people that know a lot about AI who are AI literate, who are against it. I think a lot of the anti-AI in a way is rightfully, understandably like hesitation, because it is scary. There's all sorts of other implications in terms of the environmental impact, in terms of loss of expression. I mean, all these things really do worry me too. But at the same time, I have these amazing kids sitting in front of me, and if they don't know how to use it, I worry that they will be at a disadvantage going forward. So I want to teach them how to use it in a responsible way, but then also boost their reading and their writing with it and their knowledge base using it as a tool.
So if I'm like a college kid and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with my life, I look at teaching, right? There's low pay. Everyone's cheating with AI. I feel like personally, teacher-parent relationships have really degraded over the past 5 to 10 years. Why should I choose teaching for my career? From the California State Educator of the Year, why should I go into teaching?
It's a great question. I think to be a teacher is to be on the front lines in the fight for social justice, for upward mobility, for health, and for truly a more prosperous society. And I think the foundation of a democracy is a strong public education system. So I would say to young people, yeah, the society doesn't see it yet, and the reality is you may not, you know, you'll be at the cul-de-sac party or something, and they're going to go, oh, you're a teacher, you know, you're not going to get the same reaction as if you told them you were, I don't know, an accountant or something, but who wants to do that? But you will make a difference every single day, and you'll know it. I had this huge surgery like 5 years ago on my leg, and I was in the hospital at UCLA for an entire week, and one of my ex-students showed up. He saw on social media that I was in there, and he just literally shows up to the room, and he came in. I couldn't believe it. He sat down. We talked for like an hour or 2 hours about life and books and sports, and we had a real bond when he was in my class. And then he left me a handwritten note when he left, and I cried, you know, while reading it, and I still got that in a special spot at home. And I'm gonna cry just thinking about it right now. And I've often thought about this, not to bag on accountants again, but like, who would go to a hospital out of their way to like see their favorite accountant? Like, yeah. I don't think anyone would, but to go see their teacher, he did. So I think that's the power of teaching, and I don't think you can get that in almost any other profession.
But who was that teacher for you? Who would you have shown up for?
Oh, wow, yeah. There were so many. I mean, I think that's why I became a teacher, honestly. I mean, when I look back on really like the narrative of my life with all the stuff I went through with my cancer and stuff like that in 8th and 9th grade, it was the teachers that really are like the central characters of my life in that time. I mean, they were Mr. Ortiz came to my house to teach me history and to hang out with me. Miss Satsky was our photo teacher, and she wallpapered my hospital room with 8x10s of smiling photos of my friends. You know, it's just emotional thinking about it. And then there was Mr. Phelan, and Mr. Letcher, my two, high school teachers, and Miss Foster, who basically demanded that I try out for school plays. Because I couldn't play sports anymore, and that's all I cared about as a young person. And then the cancer took away sports. So then Ms. Caligiuri pushed me to run for student government. I ended up becoming, ASB president. And then Ms. Foster pushed me to do theater, which I never would have done. And I ended up being like the lead in Guys and Dolls and stuff like that. So, but that too, though, is really informative because they showed me what I was capable of, and I feel like that's what teachers are supposed to do. Like, I know that they don't see yet what they're capable of, and I wouldn't expect them to, and that's okay. And sometimes, unfortunately, school has made them think that they're not capable. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like one of my jobs is to carry that torch for them, and I know what they can do, and I'll carry that for them until they can carry it themselves.
I think there is that question, though, of like, the relationships are so important, and then also we are judged on perceived professionalism, right? And I think that there are some instances where that relationship piece and the professionalism piece do have some tension between the two, right? Like, you don't want to like blur the line too much, right? Like, I'm wondering if you can talk to that tension. Like, how would a new teacher navigate that, trying to put relationships first and be like, I remember sitting in so many teacher trainings where they're like, you need to be vulnerable with your students. But there's a moment where that vulnerability is not professional anymore, right? And this is a complicated question, right? Yeah. But like, I don't know, what advice would you give a new teacher trying to navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. It's very complicated. I think, well, early in my career, this old teacher guy told me this, that he said, you got to be 80% nerd, 20% cool. And that is essential. And if you're too cool, then it's not going to work. They're going to actually stop respecting you after a little bit, and no one will do any work. And if you're too nerd, then you're not going to connect with them. So you have to find that balance. But you always have to remind yourself that I'm not their friend, you know. And I mean, it's gotten easier with my age, because now they just look at me as this like dorky dad, you know. It's made things a lot easier, ironically. But you know, when I was younger, when I was first starting, it was like a challenge, because like I was like 22, 23. And, you know, some of these kids, they were like, what's up? You know, they thought we were like bros or something. And I'm like, no, you know. So you have to walk that line. I mean, I think it is important to be vulnerable and to show being vulnerable. But then at the same time, you have to recognize that you are teaching all the kids in the room. I have 36 kids in each class, and I want to teach all of them. I want all of them to listen to me. I want all of them to trust me. Early in my career, I mentioned politics one time, and I lost like 30% of the class, 40% of the class to stop listening to me. And I never did that again. And that was an early, young in my career mistake, because I want to teach all the kids. And so, you know, you have to balance that. But it's also, too, it's just being constantly attuned to them. But, you know, for instance, this essay that they just wrote, this was an 8-page essay with an open thesis, like 6 sources. These are 10th graders. I mean, this is a really tough essay. But I know that they would not be able to write it, or they wouldn't write it well, if we didn't have the relationship. You know, I'm going around the room like a moron playing Rocky theme song, going like, this is going to be the best essay of your lives, guys. You know, and I really get cheesy and corny in a way, but it works, because they're like laughing. But I do communicate that I believe in you, and we build to that. You know, I'm not just throwing that at them. You know, we're building that. I'm very big on growth mindset. I use not yet grading for a lot of different things. We're building skills, stuff like that. So there's a science to it too, but you can balance both. I mean, I think that's actually the best. I would argue that the concert of all of that gets you to levels of rigor that you could not get to without the relationship piece. Again, it goes back to that. I could set an incredibly hard obstacle course and make it so hard, and like 10 to 15, 20% of the kids will get there, and then I could pat myself on the back and say, oh, I'm a great teacher. But I want to get as many up there as possible. And I can do that if I make it rigorous, but also communicate that I care and that I believe you can get there. You are a performer as a teacher. Like, that's for real. And, you know, I think of it more of a stand-up comedy, though, you know, because it's like, I'll come upon a joke in first period, but it doesn't quite land. But then I'm like, oh, okay, so by third period, I've got the timing right.
Workshopped it.
And I get like, and it works.
Yep.
You know, there's so much research on this. You know, there's all the research on the affective filter that when we feel comfortable, we learn more. So it's really, to me, it's by design. They just think I'm goofball, Mr. Cuny up here. But we get insanely high results, I mean, every semester. So, you know, I mean, we were the only school that I know of in our entire area that raised test scores during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
When we were all, and we made it about relationships, and we led from kindness.
All right, who's the cattiest department at the school?
The cattiest?
Yeah, the faculty member you would not want to sit next to, or the department you like, no.
I think I have to take the cake on that one.
Okay, I want your apple.
Oh my gosh. The person I would not want to, I have to eat the cake.
Ooh, Honeycrisp. Dale Teacher's Lounge cake. Oh, the best, right?
Been in the Teacher's Lounge for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't know how it got there. Somebody just brought it in. It's often said, I think you've said this before, that like education is, you know, like the foundation of democracy, right? What happens when that foundation starts to crack?
It's starting to crack. I already see it. And I think, you know, if a kid can't read by third grade, the chances, especially if they're male, of ending up in prison are like off the charts. So it's wild to me to think that we know this. And we know then if we could get every kid to read by third grade, we could dramatically reduce crime in our country. We could improve health. We could probably have a better society. It's wild to me that we're not making that more of a major priority. And I think the root of almost every problem in our country, you could draw a line right back to education, not really being there for that situation. So I think I think if we put a little bigger spotlight on it, I think we made it more attractive for the best and the brightest to go into the field, because I think it's a huge part of this. If we really made sure that teacher education programs were amazing around the country. And I think we tend to pay the tab after the fact rather than investing up front, whether that's medically or whatever. And I think this is the same kind of thing. I think we've got to focus on it. But I think we could turn it around. I think for sure. I don't think it would be that hard. I think you just need to get the right people in the rooms, making it a focus, and team up with teachers rather than the other, being so combative.
I want other controversial education takes.
One thing I learned from all the teachers of the year is that none of us give homework.
I feel so validated right now.
Like I don't give I don't give homework really.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while, like if it's like we're reading a book, like we're reading 1984, they'll have to read a chapter or something for homework. I try to keep it reasonable. But I don't really give homework anymore. I mean, because there's so many problems with it. I mean, this is before AI.
Let's cook.
Right? Like I don't want to give a kid a 0 on Monday for their homework because I didn't realize that his parents are divorced, and his book was at dad's house while he was at mom's house that weekend. And then some people will say, well, he should have told me about that. Well, I don't really feel like it's appropriate to ask a 14-year-old to put that on their shoulders, come up and tell me about the horrific home situations going on so that I will not give them a 0 on the homework. So I've always been worried about that anyway. And also there's so much research that's not effective. Like it doesn't do much of anything. The research I've seen is that it's only effective in upper grade math and only when it's like 15 questions or less. My test scores, I don't want to brag about test scores, but they're very high.
Do it.
And I don't give homework, you know what I mean? And I know plenty of teachers that pile homework on and it doesn't show up. So I think, again, if you think homework's going to get you to that outcome, it's just misleading. Other controversial
Yeah,
takes?
I want what's going to get you a side eye in the faculty meeting?
Well, take late work at no penalty. I mean, like reasonably. I would say reasonably. Again, it goes to the nuance thing.
Yeah.
Because whenever I bring this up, I once had an English teacher say, oh, so I take all the work on the last day? And I was like, you teach rhetoric. That is the slippery slope. I mean, like, what are you doing to me right now? You know better. You know better. Of course, I'm not saying that. So it's all about nuance, but it's like a kid walks up 3 days late. I had my family move and this thing, can I still turn that thing in? Yes. And they go, really? And that teaches me that that's not happening elsewhere, you know? And I want the grade to reflect their mastery of what I'm trying to get them to do, not whether they are, aren't in 3 clubs and have a crazy home life going on, right? So that's a big one. Take late work, like why not? I mean, to a point, you still have to teach responsibility, I think a little bit, but last time I checked, it said English teacher, not responsibility teacher. So I also am working with teenagers. I think it's really, really important to read up on the research, like Erickson's psychology on the stages of crisis for a teenager, because I hear this a lot about like, we have to get them ready for the real world. And it's like, well, just read up on educational psychology or go talk to ChatGPT, because a 16-year-old does not have the brain of a 22-year-old, let alone a 25-year-old. And so I think it's unrealistic to even expect that. It's not, it's actually almost malpractice.
There are teachers who are receiving a lot of heat from their communities, from politicians, from just a lot of different stakeholders and voices that I think get magnified, right? I don't necessarily think everybody feels negatively about teachers, but sometimes those are the loudest voices that we hear. What is your message about what we do every day and why is it important?
That's a great question. I mean, I personally have friends from all over the political spectrum, and they all know the work that I do. And I was a guy recently was like, I wish all teachers were like you, Casey. And I'm like, they are. Like, we are. But and I've said this for many years, I'm just a teacher trying to get better every day. And that's what it's all about. This is a profession that is so difficult because you never can get to perfection because you're working with little humans. And you have a million variables thrown at you every single day. And I think other teachers are just doing the same thing. We go to work every day because we care about our communities. Like, I want to help kids become better writers and readers and thinkers so they can go become better cops and firefighters and nurses and accountants and radiologists. And that's my mission every single day. So I would say to the public out there, question what you're hearing about these evil teachers, because, I mean, just consider how hard it is to become a teacher in terms of having to work for free for an entire year as a student teacher, which is just insane. And then all the negativity that you get. The people that are doing it have such big hearts. And not only that, they're so bright. The other teachers that I work with are the smartest people I even know, honestly. And what we're trying to do is really make our communities better. It all comes down to the community. And so I would say, please help us. Come into the schools and, well, maybe not that, but no, just joking. But engage with teachers beyond what you hear in the news. And then, trust us and treat us like the professionals that we are. And I think great things can happen.
But seriously, you should sign up to be a substitute teacher in your district. We're desperate.
That too.
Yeah. No, and you know, when you think about all of the asks that we make of teachers, right? Like, to some extent, we are mental health professionals. We have been taught to, you know, try and look for the signs of abuse or neglect or violence or, you know, all manner of things. We can be health workers to some extent, especially during the pandemic, or even if a kid like injures themselves in our room and we have to make a decision about what we're going to do for that kid and what kind of attention they need. We, you know, are social workers to some extent. We are content specialists. We are child psychology specialists to some extent. And I guess my question for you is, when is the ask going to be too much?
Well, one could argue it already is too much. You know, on top of everything, you know, there's always a chilling moment. We have a fire alarm, and I grab my keys and rush to the door and lock it. And the kids are like, "Why are you locking the door?" I'm like, "Well, because fire alarms often get pulled now for school shootings, so I have to do this." And it's like crazy that I have to do that, you know? So, I mean, those things, it's a lot. But I mean, it's tough too, because all those things that you just described, right? They are part of the job, actually. I mean, you know, I think there's some people that think teaching is just the content expert piece, you know? And I've always felt like, no offense to my math teacher friends, but the greatest mathematicians do not make the greatest math teachers. It's a completely different craft. But I think it's so important for teachers to take things off their plate and learn to say no early, you know, and also work to simplify. You know, I've always said if this activity comes with laminated sentence starter cards, I'm out. Like, no, thank you. And I don't want to have to go through a lot of work to put stuff up. I personally found a style that works for me, which is much more minimalist, which is much more Socratic method style and groups and things like that. And I think you've got to find that style, but you can pick a kid in kindergarten or first grade, and you can look at a couple statistics, parent income and parent education level, and you can predict with most certainty how far that kid's going to go, right? You can predict their third grade reading scores and say whether they're going to most likely end up in prison or not, unless they get a great teacher. I think teaching is the most powerful profession. My good friend Missy Testerman, the National Teacher of the Year, she says, we make the other professions. And so I think we need to remember that as teachers, and then I hope that the public can come around to that and partner with us as we try to work to really help the country, because that's what is really, I think, the main focus.
So we actually asked your students, if you could ask Mr. Cuny anything, what would you ask him? And so we have some of these questions for you. Okay. This first one is a little interesting. How do you deal with the absurdity of life?
I don't even know who would ask that. Well, I mean, life is absurd in many ways. So I think I try to laugh. I try to laugh at like a lot, and but also find meaning. I'm big on my students about that. Like because I teach mythology, right? So I'm like, I could view my life as a historical timeline with these things that happen. Okay, that's fine. Or I could view it through a mythological lens, like a Joseph Campbell lens, that like there's this hero's journey and there's these symbolic events that have occurred throughout my life. And someone might call me delusional for viewing life that way, but I think I'm having more fun. So, because I'm making meaning in my life.
One of our other questions from your students is, what has been your biggest teaching mistake?
My biggest teaching mistake, and I made it this year, is just not being fast enough with my feedback to students and communicating more frequently to them through Google Classroom or other things like that. I mean, it's like we all know it. We all know as fast as I can get this back to them, the better. But then life intervenes and things happen.
And you have 10-page essays to write.
Yeah, and like they made a podcast recently. It was really good, but I still have to listen to like 2 of them, and I feel so guilty that I haven't listened to them. And every time they walk in the class and I see their face, and I think, oh, they're wondering if I'm going to say anything about it, and I haven't listened to it yet. They don't care yet, probably not. But it's that main character syndrome that my son has. But so yeah, that's probably the big one, is just getting faster with the feedback.
Okay, so this question's kind of personal, all right? So you mentioned that you had cancer, and the question is, if you could change whether or not you had cancer, but risk losing what you have now, like, would you make that trade essentially?
No way. No way. No, I mean, but then this actually comes up in my myth class. Now, if you'd asked my 13-year-old self, I would have said, yes, please, please, please. I was praying for it and begging for it every single night at that time, and I didn't think I'd even live. But no, like, that's life. You know, like that led me on my journey. So I have my amazing best friend, my wife, and my 2 boys, and I'm gonna cry just thinking about it, and this incredible career. I mean, I became a teacher because of it. I mean, it's like made me who I am. So, it's important to remember that, we go through trauma, and we talk a lot about post-traumatic stress, but there also can be post-traumatic growth, which I think is really important. And if we see the perspective of that, which I think is important. So, no, it made me who I am. It made me I created really a value system that I have. So 100% I wouldn't go back. And my myth, it's a prick of the finger is a metaphor for pain in life that makes the goddess want to retreat. And life's going to be filled with lots of pricks of the finger. But if we didn't have the prick of the finger, we wouldn't have the opposite, which is the glory that sometimes happens in life too. So, they have to come together.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay, last question. One of your students wants to know if you'll follow them on Instagram after they graduate.
I think I'll eat the cake.
Well, thank you so much for having lunch with me. I mean, I didn't eat any of my Spam, but cheers.
We wanted a day in the life of a teacher, so. Oh, wow, you did it. You did it.